Hi there anglers, Steve Miller with Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Hey, today we're going to teach you about picking the right rod for the right technique. So let's start with power. This is probably the one that we're all most familiar with. You know, rods come from anywhere from ultralight to heavy actions. And it's exactly what it's talking about. It's how much power does that rod have in it, how much backbone does it have in it. So obviously an ultralight rod, it's going to be softer, it's going to be more forgiving. A medium action rod is going to have some more stiffness to it. Medium heavy is probably your all-around rod power that a lot of us use day in and day out. And then you get all the way up to a heavy. You know, heavy is that really stiff rod that you're going to use for heavy cover. So let's talk about the right action for the right technique. You know, if you're fishing a crankbait or a moving bait, you're probably going to want more of a medium action rod, especially for something like a square bill. Now, if you jump up and you're fishing a heavy spinner bait or maybe a medium diving crankbait, you might want to go to a medium heavy just to make sure you got enough power backbone in that rod. If you're flipping and pitching a jig, you're going to want to use a heavy action rod because you're flipping into cover. You want to be able to pull that fish out of cover. So that's power, ultralight to heavy, depending on the technique. The other part of the rod that's a little bit more, it's a little different, we have to think about how it really works is rods all have an action rating. So typically the action rating is a moderate, a fast, or an extra fast. And what that action rating means is where does that rod bend? Where does the backbone of the rod really start to kick in on the rod? So on a moderate action rod, it's going to be further back in the rod. The backbone or the power rod is going to be halfway back in the rod. The tip's going to be more forgiving. It's going to be softer. So in those techniques, that's where we're going to be fishing a crankbait. We're fishing treble hooks. You know, we don't want to pull the bait out of the fish's mouth. We want to rip the lure out of there. So we want a little bit softer action on the tip, but backbone in the rod. So you know, a square bill, you're probably going to be using a medium heavy rod with a moderate action. If you're a deep diving crankbait, maybe you go to a medium heavy action or medium heavy power rod, but a moderate action so you still have enough backbone to handle that big bait. So that's moderate. Jump up to fast. So fast is going to move the flex of the rod higher up into the rod. Fast action is kind of an all-around rod technique. So a 7-foot medium heavy fast rod, you'll be able to do a lot of things with it. You can fish crankbait with it a little bit. You can still jig fish with it okay. It's going to have a multi-purpose rod to it. Of extra fast action, that's where we're moving the power of the rod really farther up into the tip. We're moving it up here. You know, the rod's going to bend a little bit at the tip, but you're going to start getting backbone really fast in your rod. And that's, you know, your heavy action rods a lot of times are an extra fast action. We're fishing a bottom bait, something that we want to drive the hook home in the fish because we need a hard hook set. We're using a heavy gauge hook. You know, you're flipping and pitching heavy cover, 30-pound test line, you use a big line, big hooks. You're going to want an extra fast rod. It's not going to bend a whole lot, but you're going to be able to drive the hook set home and get that fish out of that heavy cover. So a couple simple things on rods: power, how much power does the rod have, ultralight to heavy, and then action, where does that bend take place in the rod? So if you got any questions, drop into your local Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's. Our team members, they're very knowledgeable on rods. They know what they're talking about. That's what they're there for.